Um, wow, that song really did get to me. Did you write that? Yeah. Wow. And you have it recorded someplace we can buy it?
Not currently.
Luckily, I know people who can pray that into being. Hi. Or maybe one of these days I'll turn on the radio and hear it, yeah? All right. So, wow, yeah, that song kind of blew away what functioning brain cells I had. This month we are talking about being pulled by a vision. And this week, the topic we were given to play with is commitment. Now, my brain works a little differently than some people's, and so I went, yeah, but who really wants to be committed? I mean, it's the great institution of whatever, but who wants to be institutionalized? So I went to look it up because I was sure that my buddy Webster would have a better idea of what commitment meant. The nuns would not be happy because apparently the definition of commitment is the act of committing, which does me no good. The state of being committed. I just said I didn't want to be committed. The act of committing. Son of a motherless goat. The act of committing, pledging or engaging oneself, a pledge or promise. And then we're going to ignore the part about the perpetration or commission as of a crime, because that was my other career back in the day. Not being a criminal, but working in criminal defense. You know that, like religious scientists, we are the people who never found a law or a rule we didn't want to at least bend to see how twisty it might be. Yeah? We are the cultural creatives. That is who we are. We want to have a direct experience of God. We don't want to be told how to behave. We want to try it on for size, and we don't believe the whole one-size-fits-all mythology. Yes? We have to have it fit us. If we are going to commit to something, we are going to know it inside and out, and we are going to know why we're committing to it and exactly what it is we're committing to. I'll remind you at the end of this, towards the end of this month, somewhere in the 20s, I think it's in the 20, it's a Saturday, there is a new member Sunday. New member orientation just means you want to know more about this teaching and you want a forum in which you can ask any question in the world about the teaching, not about, I don't know where they get the pink lemons for pink lemonade, okay, guys? Nor do I know how flies land on the ceiling. However, if you're going to commit to a spiritual path, you should know not just what the path looks like, but where you're going. Yes? The spiritual journey is very interesting. I think it should come with, the little writing, where I wasn't told until the end of ministerial school that just because I was on a ministerial journey didn't mean I'd enjoy all parts of it. With all due respect to Texas, some parts of it are like driving through Texas for days and days, where you could fall asleep and wake up and not be sure if you have moved. It's a big state, isn't it? So being committed requires that we be aware, that we be thinking. It is our belief in this philosophy that Spirit created all of this by contemplating itself. In order to contemplate anything, there has to be a subject as each of us as individuals. In the Judeo-Christian tradition, in the book of Genesis, it talks about Spirit, the divine Spirit, said, "Let there be light," spoke a word, said something, and something was created. Well, those words are based on thoughts, and the thoughts of God are what created you. Each of us individually is created by the thoughts of God, and we are made in its image and likeness. We are made in the same nature as God. So as Spirit or God contemplates and creates, so do we create what we contemplate. Now that means that if you are always watching Lifetime movies. It is perhaps going to create some drama in your life. If you are looking out at the world as if the script for the whole planet was written by Stephen King, oi gewalt. If, however, you will look out at the world and say, maybe I can find some good, and each day you go look for what good has been created. It doesn't have to look like oh, I'm choking on it. It doesn't have to look like a Disney movie. Most of my friends growing up would have preferred the horse to Prince Charming, frankly. But that's because my sister's friends were all equestrians. It doesn't mean that your world that you look out at has to look like anyone else's. You might want Princess Charming. You might want your knight in shining armor to take off the armor so that he, she, or they can be hugged. Have you ever tried to hug someone in armor? Yeah, me neither. I didn't grow up with people wearing armor, sorry. So what we're dedicating ourselves to is learning who we are. Now, there's a story that goes around, and it gets attributed to George Washington, usually at the beginning of July. It gets attributed to great kings and great generals. But the story goes something like this. There is a ragtag little army that is in the battle for their lives in the morning. But first they have to cross a river to get to where the other army is. Personally, I'd have stayed on my side and let them come to me. But that's not how the story goes. So they get in the boat early in the morning, and they cross the crazy water. And when they get out of to where the battle's going to be, the general says, "Do you believe we can win?" And of course, because it's a rah-rah moment, they say, "Yes, of course we can win." Are we committed to this cause? Yes, of course we're committed to this cause. And so the general or king or George Washington says, okay, burn the boats. Burn the boats, because we can't afford a way out of this. We can't afford an escape hatch. There is no clause in this particular sacred contract we call life that says we can just skip it. Now, I know some of you are really smart and are already thinking, have used an escape hatch. I will tell you right now that spirit is eternal. Your spirit is eternal. And if you are thinking that somehow you can get out of this thing called life, you can get out of your physical body, yes. You cannot get out of being you, and you cannot get out of life according to this teaching. If you disagree with me, that's fine. You're allowed to disagree here. But I'm right. I dang well better be for the number of years I have studied and the amount of money I poured into this education. But it is my personal belief that there has never been a successful suicide. And it was one of my teachers' beliefs that if Jesus believed he was actually going to the cross to die, he never would have been able to rise again. He knew, walking in, that he could not die. And therefore, they could do whatever they wanted to his physical body. And so the master teacher, Jesus, was just giving us another lesson in, look, this is the physical world. I can change it anytime I want, and I am not stuck in here and limited to this physical body. I can change my clothes or my physical body, and it works. Because who we are is so much more than that. Who and what we are is made in the image and likeness of an eternal spirit. And so when we are committed to this life, when we come into this life and sign the sacred contract saying, okay, I'm going to be of this gender, I'm going to look like this, I'm going to have these parents, I'm going to do whatever, and then we come into this life, we have committed, as our spiritual self has committed to riding the whole ride. Now, teaching symbol. We have talked about the teaching symbol, and I finally realized it was this candle, which is several feet in front of me, I'm not setting myself on fire, that people were looking at thinking I was about to set myself on fire. Our symbol that we've talked about all month, the top part is divine spirit, it is pure thought, it is the seed which we plant in the soil of our souls and end up with the plant of our experience. But this V thing, I've shared with you before that when Ernest Holmes came up with this symbol, he was working for the city of Ventura. If you take the two horizontal bars out, that's the symbol for the city of Ventura. There are sermons and stones, people. As we take the divine idea and make it manifest, as Spirit chooses to manifest as this world, we have a divine idea. It filters through our thoughts and beliefs, especially the unconscious ones, and it becomes an experience. That is the bottom of the V, where Spirit gets to have an experience. And you know what? It doesn't stop there. That V has a second side. So as we are having this physical experience, we decide, do I like it? Do I not like it? Is it pretty close? Is it not even close? Is it kind of not an adventure I want to continue on? And you know what we can do? We have our thoughts about it. We create some beliefs about it. Those enter into our soul's library, if you will. And now we can go back up to ourselves as spirit and choose again. I don't know if you can see it, but there is a little hook on the end of that V. Because you know what happens when we have had the experience and processed it and come back up and seen it from our divine selves? We dive back down. This ride we're on is not unlike a roller coaster. We keep going down and then back up and then down. Follow the bouncing ball, people. That is your soul. We get to decide, since we believe that spirit is eternal, since the laws of thermodynamics and most science teach that energy can be neither created nor destroyed, it can only change form. The more we learn about that, the more we find that this physical world is actually energy that's been slowed down enough for us to see it, taste it, and feel it. But we can decide, because we are made in the image and likeness of God, to recreate our world. To stop seeing a world that includes poverty and racism and homophobia and sexism and slavery and all sorts of other stuff, and step into a world that works for everyone. Now, when I say a world that works for everyone, it doesn't mean just from my point of view. It means that we let go of judgment about how other people are doing it. We figure out what works for us, and we get to live in a way that works for us, but we also get to look around the rest of the planet and around the rest of the multiverse and say, we have not left out any of our brothers and sisters in the Christ consciousness. Everybody has clean water. Everybody who wants a roof has a roof. Everybody who wants to dance gets to dance in their own way. Just like, the toddlers, they dance. They don't need the music. They have fun with it. So what we believe, what we teach in this teaching is, as Ernest Holmes would say, to learn how to think is to learn how to live. For our thoughts go into a medium that is that's not the one I was looking for. What we do in religious science is take the world of spirit and the natural laws and try and figure out how they work, so that we may live. One of the ways we do it is by coming together as a spiritual community. Now, on Wednesday, hopefully, many of you, including those whose residential address is not in Arizona, but whose IP address can get you here, we come together and talk about who are we really and how do we want to participate in the world, both digitally and in person. I asked for a town hall meeting to start being a regular thing that we do, because this center belongs to the congregation, whether you are here physically or here digitally. I have been asked to be part of Quad City Interfaith Council, and so I am. And part of what we do is the Evening of Thanks in November. That is the Thursday before Thanksgiving. It's a full week before Thanksgiving. It's an interfaith celebration where we get together and talk about what we believe. We do the Martin Luther King Day celebration, and we also do something called Operation Deep Freeze. Now, all of that is local. Operation Deep Freeze, believe it or not, yes, we live in Arizona, but it does snow and get cold. There was a time when our neighbors were freezing to death because they didn't have houses. And Operation Deep Freeze is emergency shelter for when the weather is too bad in this particular part of the world for people to be sleeping outside. It needs a new home. What do we want to do about that? Is that ours to look at? I'm also on the executive board of the Coalition for Compassion and Justice, CCJ. We spent a week hosting them when their floors were being redone. Not everybody felt that that was ours to do. And there was a conversation that happened before we opened our doors to it. Not everybody feels that that is something we should be doing, that this is, I believe one of the ways it was put to me was this is, the whole building is a sanctuary, and the person speaking to me felt like he wasn't comfortable with his beautiful sanctuary being used in that way. He felt there were other better ways for us to be of service. That's not wrong. There's lots of other better ways for us to be of service. We're a relatively affluent center. And so when Home Office sends me another email saying, hey, we're buying a camp for the teenagers, would you like to donate? I send it to the board and say, hey, would we like to donate? And the board needs to hear from you about, would we like to donate? When there are, we actually just helped create, by fiscally supporting, an online community that is helping to honor our African American ministers and people who have given to New Thought. People who have had huge, incredible impacts within the African American community in the world of New Thought, who might go unnoticed because they don't have as big a platform as, we are still trying to move into a post-racial society. There's lots of ways we can choose to interact. There's lots of great things that we can be doing. What we need to know is what is ours to do, and that requires us to know ourselves, to spend some time allowing the divine idea to come down into form, trying it on, and then trying the next thing, deciding how we felt about that. So on Wednesday, that is the first of many conversations that can happen around what is our way to do it, what is our best and brightest idea. We have to have space to have these honest conversations. And if there's another topic you would like brought up, then bring it up. We have microphones all over the place. Believe me, this is not the only one. The other thing that we'll be doing next week is graduation. We'll be celebrating the commitment to the spiritual path that many people have made. Now, some people do it without a license. Some people do it with a prac license, and some people do it with a ministerial license. Here I am that flavor of crazy. As I tell people that it takes a special flavor of crazy to want to be a minister in this day and age. Because we're about as good as defining what a minister is as Merriam-Webster was in here. A minister is one who ministers. Yeah. So there are all sorts of wonderful things to be committed to. There are all sorts of reasons. People have different reasons to commit to different things. Does anybody here have a four-legged owner living in their house that you are staffed to? Or living adjacent to your house? Maybe they have their own little building. When you take on opening up your home to another living being, there is a commitment there. Whether it's a marriage, an animal, a foster kid, a naturally born to you child, there is a commitment being made there to join your lives. The thing is, if there's really only one of us, and that circle means that it's all God, which means we're all one. As we grow, as we learn, as Spirit contemplates Excuse me, there's a piece of dust somewhere in there. As spirit contemplates itself and chooses to see itself more clearly as us, as we look in the mirror and come closer and closer to seeing ourselves as we are, Christed beings who are supposed to be doing certain work, as that happens, as that happens, we begin to see the rewards of our spiritual journey. We get to see what our commitment has allowed us to do. And it's not just like we commit to something, we take a journey, we get to the end. You have to wake up and commit to it every single day, right? Every day you have to reopen your eyes and say, what face of God do I choose to see in the mirror today? Is it going to be hazy and cloudy? Is it going to be completely white out conditions? Or am I going to choose to see clearly? A little bit more clearly than I did yesterday. Excuse me. One of the things that happens is that along this journey, we have some people who are great examples. We call them the mystics. Some of them are musicians and lyricists. Some of them are teachers. They're working with our kids in the back right now. Some of them are artists that do physical representation. Some of them sew. Some of them sing. Some of them dance. Some of them come here and go into the silence of meditation. But these are our mystics who have seen the face of God and choose to report back to the rest of us on our path. And if you look at page 333 of our textbook, we are given 3 promises. What Ernest Holmes wrote is that all of the great mystics have taught practically the same thing. They have all agreed that the soul is on the pathway of experience, that is, of self-discovery. That it is on its way back to the Father's house, and that every soul will eventually, ultimately, reach its heavenly home. Now, you can call that heavenly home the Father's house, you can call it nirvana, you can call it enlightenment, you can call it potato. It doesn't really matter. Potato, whatever. Call it what you will. By the time we all get there, we will be beyond words, and so it won't matter what people are calling it. What we call mystics, the people who are here to serve as witnesses, as sacred witnesses to who we really are, in other cultures are called bodhisattva. Those who have seen and choose to reincarnate in this life in order to be of service to the greater whole. There are so many of them. Some of them have titles and some of them you will never meet. The greatest bodhisattva I ever met worked in a file room in the back of a law office. And she would not have known the word bodhisattva. She was a devout Christian. And she was one of the only people I would say, having a bad day, will you pray? And when she talked about her experience of her father's house, of her father, it sounded like someone she'd had breakfast with that morning. She would say, I was talking to my father today. And what she meant was she had gone to prayer. But it was almost like she could have said, Dad. That is the relationship we are to have with Spirit. That is what is walking this path within us. That is the relationship we are to have with the person in the mirror. That loving, that perfect, that accepting of all that we are. No one promised us human perfection. We are already divinely perfect, and I've already talked about that in other talks. But our job, what we committed to, what Spirit has committed to in the creation of this world, is to see itself clearly as us. And we move forward by having those conversations that some people call prayer. On Wednesday, we'll call it a town hall. And so we're going to go into that conversation right now. I pray from here so that we all remember that these words could come out of your mouth. These words hopefully are already echoing in your own heart. These words are Spirit speaking you through me. And so I ask you to join me now. If you want to close your eyes, that's awesome. If you don't, if there is something else you do to get into that attitude of what we call prayer. We're already the one mind. We are already one being living as many, many individuals. That one being is the one mind. It is what we call God. It is the principle, the pure and perfect love and life itself. It is the energy that took form as the whole universe, as all mass. It is the pure and perfect being that had a beautiful thought and created all humans, this planet, all beings everywhere, great and small. It had another perfect thought and created song. It had another perfect thought, and the mystics sang that song. And here we are. The truth is, we are part of that because there is nothing else to be. And so our commitment to discovering that pure and perfect being living in our skin is the truth of who we are. It is the source of all of our true heart's desires. It is the source of our standing up and declaring ourselves as the adult children of God. It is the power that allows us to stand up and see ourselves clearly as authentically rich, as beloved of the beloved, being part of this great one, being part of our true beingness is a great light that causes all of the shadows to disappear. And so our belief in brokenness, our belief in depression, our belief in being stuck on the outside, our belief in poverty or injustice, our belief in homelessness or not enoughness, all of that is just, it's rolled up and put with the things we used to believe. As we stand in the truth of our being and the truth of our absolute belovedness and the truth of our wholeness, this is the truth of our being. This is spirit and how it truly sees itself and what spirit chooses to contemplate as us. And so I am grateful that spirit sees so clearly. I am grateful that spirit contemplating and seeing us clearly for what we are and this earth for what it truly is now moving all of that true seeing into being so that we may share that vision. I give thanks that it is done unto us according to the truth of what we believe. And I release everything else, and I release this word into the law, into the natural law that allows us to see it in form. I call it all good and very good, and so it is.